Come, thou fount of every blessing, tune my heart to sing thy grace. Streams of mercy, never ceasing, call for songs of loudest praise. Teach me some melodious sonnet, sung by flaming tongues above. Praise the mount, I'm fixed upon it, mount of thy redeeming love. Of the many hymns we have considered in our midweek reflections this year, this is, I think, one of the more autobiographical ones. It was written by Robert Robinson, an 18th century Baptist preacher. In his hymn, he was reflecting on his own experience of coming to an understanding and faith in Jesus Christ. As a young man, he had served as an apprentice barber in the city of London, and when he was in the big city, he had lived, by all accounts, quite a wild life, and kept indeed some pretty bad and dangerous company. However, all of that changed when he heard the preaching of one of the first great evangelical preachers in England, George Whitefield. Whitefield was ordained as a Church of England priest, but never settled in a parish. Instead, he went preaching in streets, on byways and highways, and indeed even in fields in the countryside. He was famed for a more demonstrative mode of preaching and one with a more emotional appeal. Well, Robinson heard him and was changed utterly by the experience, eventually training for the ministry himself. Following this turnaround in his life in 1755, Robinson wrote this hymn, and indeed he first preached at a Calvinist Methodist chapel in Maidenhill in Suffolk, and then he founded his own independent congregation in Norwich. Eventually, he became a Baptist, and he went on to be the minister of Stoneyard Baptist Church in Cambridge, where he served for over 30 years. The evangelical fervour of someone whose life had been changed, the excitement and the passion for that change, is reflected in the words of our hymn, particularly the line in the final verse. Prone to wander, Lord, I feel it, prone to leave the God I love. A recognition for all of us, perhaps, that our faith journey is always one that is in progress, and that progress is usually not always straightforward. But central to the hymn is the story from 1 Samuel chapter 7. And it's a story from Samuel where Samuel himself is speaking to the people of Israel, and where he calls the people of God back from their wayward paths to return to worship and faith in God alone. Upon a positive response to this plea, to this call to repentance, the people face danger in the guise of the Philistines. They place their trust in God and are saved from their oppressors. In response to this saving act of God, Samuel raises a standing stone in that place. And the stone is called Ebenezer, meaning the stone of help. It is a recognition of God's help for his people. And I think that this hymn, written very soon after his conversion, was Robinson's own monument, if you like, to the change that faith in Jesus had brought to him, his worldview, his way of living. He writes, "Here I raise my Ebenezer. Hither by thy help I've come, and I hope by thy good pleasure safely to arrive at home. Jesus sought me when a stranger, wandering from the fold of God, he to rescue me from danger, interposed his precious blood." The hymn closes with this final verse. "O to grace, how great a debtor daily I'm constrained to be. Let that grace now, like a fetter, bind my wandering heart to thee. Prone to wander, Lord, I feel it, prone to leave the God I love. Here's my heart, O take and seal it for thy courts above. I absolutely love this hymn, and I think it's particularly well suited to the tune it's often sung to, Nettleton. Somehow the melody feels like it fits the sentiment of the hymn, particularly the sense of movement within the tune, charting the journey of faith itself that the hymn writer speaks of. For me, the hymn speaks of that earnest striving for faith, with an acknowledgement that the journey itself is seldom smooth or without challenge. It's difficult to live a life that accords with what Jesus called the realm or the promise of God, and to live in a way that is faithful to the gospel of love. Often we want to be the best people we can be for others, for the world, but have to wrestle with the reality that it's simply not always possible for us. And that is, I guess, the heart of the human condition. But nevertheless, undergirding this whole hymn, and I guess Robinson's own life, is the one sure thing that we all depend on, and indeed on which we can rely. And that is the grace of God. The knowledge that we are loved and cherished by the God who gave us life, who gives us life. And whatever life's many ups and downs, on that grace which we meet in the life and the story of Jesus, in the person of Christ, we can rely, truly rely. I hope you enjoy this hymn. Enjoy it, folks.